to set up a global government without having a good reason to do so. They've tried to pretend that, first of all, global warming was the good reason. Then they tried to pretend that protecting the environment is a good reason. Neither of these is a good reason for a world government. And even if there were to be a world government, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, then that government should only receive power by treaty from democratic nations, provided that that world government shall have been elected by the peoples of the states parties to the convention creating it, and they should not simply be self-appointed as they are now. Let the UN and the Law of the Sea Conference you mentioned a few moments ago, and the World Bank and the IMF, and all the plethora of international organizations that now make our life a misery prodigiously at our expense, let all of them either face election by the peoples of the world or be shut down. That's how I think we've now got to go, Alex. What we've got to do is we can stand on the sidelines and moan, or we can do something about it. What I think we now need is a new global constitution that says that any power transferred to any supranational or global institution shall only be transferred from elected hands in individual nation states to elected hands in these international organizations. No international organization should be allowed to have any fiscal or legislative power, any power over our lives at all.
And you know why that's smart, obviously. I mean, explain to people, Lord Monckton, why that's so intelligent. Because then you counter their whole, oh, we need an international debating society. Okay, you're dictatorial. You're making 83% of UK laws, and the UK's not even, as you've exposed. And I just saw a national poll where over 80%, won out now. I saw another right at 80%. When you really point out to people this is authoritarian world government, it's not just world government, and say, okay, let's get rid of your authoritarian one and let's debate a elected one, then you've taken the wind out of their sails.
That's exactly it. The left have always been terrified of democracy, because they know that in the end, democracy will not allow the establishment of these dictatorial entities, or even if they allow it to be established, as we made the mistake of doing with the EU. Now it's all falling apart under the weight of its own stupidity and expense and the greed of the politicians and bureaucrats that run it. And, there are now 30,000 bureaucrats in the EU. Heaven knows what they all do, but every single one of them has a diplomatic passport, at least $100,000 a year, free motor cars, free travel, free perks, diplomatic immunity, you name it, they've got
Oh, yeah, let me bring that up. I was about, how can Legrand, the head of the IMF, who has diplomatic immunity, tax exempt under EU rules, all this, that she helped make, how can she say Greece needs to pay more to bail out the bankers when she's exempt from those taxes? I mean, what a disconnected Marie Antoinette let them eat cake moment.
Well, that is very well put again, Alex, because the governing class has become predatory. It's become greedy. It's like a wolf taking chunks out of a passing child. Little Red Riding Hood is losing and the wolf is winning, if you like. And this greed on the part of the governing class should never be underestimated. I saw this when I worked at 10 Downing Street. Ministers jockeying to see who could get the nicest grace and favour resident, who could get the largest ministerial car, who could get the best ministerial paintings hung in their office. This kind of terrible greed at the expense of the general taxpayer. And that is really why poverty continues to exist in the West. It's because the super rich, and that is in fact the governing class, not any longer the commercial class, this super rich governing class now treats the people with such absolute contempt. And so what I think we now need is, and I'm gradually assembling this, a group of fine minds internationally, people who believe in the principles that are so wonderfully enshrined in the United States Constitution, and say, right, we now need to have a similar constitution for the world as a whole, so that if and when any further powers are transferred from nation states to supranational or global institutions, they will be transferred to institutions which respect the principles of that US Constitution, not just democracy, but also the separation of powers.
Well, you'd call that 1776 worldwide. Let me bring up one more point, going back to National Geographic, page 44 in the current issue, Lord Monckton. Then we're going to go to calls. Perhaps you can stay a bit into the next hour, so we have time to get to all of them, because we got you on a bit late. My fault today. They show on page 44, tracking a stormy sun, and they show NASA from the first measurements in the mid-1950s that were very scientific of the sun, these solar maximums and minimums, and they go on to admit it affects the space weather, the earth weather, and they have the gauge. The biggest one was in 1989. We've seen another big spike in the sun as of late that you've covered, and they're predicting the next big spike coming soon. But the UN voted. They said that the sun doesn't do anything to the earth and it doesn't change. And, I mean, could I pay Al Gore a carbon indulgence, Lord Monckton? And could maybe he make the sun behave itself? I mean, is my SUV, because I'm going to be honest, I got a big truck and an SUV. I mean, are those causing the sun to do this? Am I bad? Could I fund the UN killing some black people? Would that make this okay?
Well, now that you've made your confession on the air, your sins of emission are hereby forgiven.
Good, thank you.
The point really is, of course, that the sun is the dominant driver of our climate. It's where the warmth in global warming comes from in the first place. And as you rightly say, the 2001, I think it was, no, 2007 fourth assessment report of the UN's climate panel, this multi-thousand-page piece of garbage they come up with every few years, they voted, this was government representatives, they weren't even scientists, they voted that with 90% certainty, it was we and not the sun that had the most influence on the climate. China had said, there should be no such vote at all. Some people said there should be 95% certainty. And, of course, you can't put...
well, perhaps they should vote that gravity doesn't exist, and if they voted, we would suddenly float off the Earth.
Well, that's right. All they've got to do is pass a vote and they can change science. It's rather like trying to tell Galileo that the Earth doesn't go around the sun. You know, this kind of thing hasn't worked in the past. It isn't going to work now. What is, I think, astonishing to me is that you and I, Alex, were brought up in the age of reason and enlightenment, in which science was supposed to be free from these kind of mindless and stupid political or religious beliefs. And now here we are, back into... a religious belief that global warming is terrible.
And now, tell folks about Durban. They actually said now it's just Mother Gaia. They're going right to the worship like Avatar.
They're going right. It's a very atavistic approach, if you like. They're going back to the Tibetan Buddhism, which regards the largest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, as Tsumu Langma, which means the goddess Mother Earth. And they're going back to this, frankly, pre-medieval, prehistoric, tribalist, sort of shamanic religion, rather than science. And it's a very, very strange thing. And this, mark my words, Alex, this is what's going to bring the left down internationally. Because you can politicize just about everything you touch in the way that the left so poisonously does. The one thing you can't politicize is scientific truth. Either it is so that we're going to see rapid warming, or it isn't so. And within a few years, it will become all too apparent to everybody that it isn't.
So they've committed the Piltdown Man sin. They've taken a monkey bone or an ape bone and put a pig jaw in it, and they've been found out, and now no one's going to believe anything they say.
No, exactly. The jawbone of an ass and a pig's ear have been combined to make goodness knows what monster. But the left is now on the way out. They don't realize it yet. They think they're dominant throughout politics. They control the media. They make fun of the likes of you and me. But it is they who are now finished because they've made this colossal mistake of climbing onto the climate bandwagon just as all the wheels were falling off. They've tried to politicize science itself, and like it or not, you can't do that.
All right. Well, we're going to go to break here and maybe keep you 15 minutes the next hour because I know there's people really chomping to talk to you. Chris, Richard, John, Mike, Ronnie, we're going to go to all of you. They all want to talk about Agenda 21, other questions there. Actually, Chris has a question, a reactor question, but these are questions for Lord Monckton. Like I told folks, 800-259-9231. Yes, we have several reactors here in Austin. The problem is they don't upkeep them, and then the word is they've been hiding waste around places. So I certainly don't want to be glowing green. So we'll be right back with Lord Monckton.
The good guys love.
But you got to know you've been taken over by tyrants before you can start reversing things. Lord Monckton's our guest. Let's go to your phone calls. We're going to go to Mike, Richard, John, and many others. Mike in Mass, you're on the air. Welcome.
Yeah, how you doing today, Alex?
Pretty good.
I was wondering, first of all, with Lord Monckton, I was listening to, I think it was like an NPR affiliate. They had some crazy lady on talking about how she related the Earth, saying that it's a living, breathing creature and evidenced by the changing seasons. And she actually advocated that we need to go through the United Nations to create a crime that is above crimes of genocide for crimes against the Earth, and we need to prosecute.
Oh no! That was pushed at South Africa, Lord Monckton.
Yes, you're quite right, and there are a lot of people in the environmental movement who want to do this, who have been fooled by James Lovelock's so-called Gaia hypothesis. And of course, the reason why the seasons come and go is very well understood. It is because the Earth's axis is at an angle to the plane of the ecliptic in which it orbits. And therefore, at one moment, the North Pole is closer to the sun, the next moment the South Pole is, and at the equinoxes it's halfway in between. And that is what makes the seasons come and go.
That's preposterous. Everybody knows there's blood inside the Earth, and it's actually a big turtle.
Well, there you are, exactly. And it's held up on the back of a huge man. Yes, no, I mean, this is the extraordinary thing, is that we're now going back to a sort of pathetic medieval or even prehistoric tribal witch doctor kind of religion, replacing science. And you get all of this gibberish about how the Earth is hurting. No, it isn't. The Earth is more than capable of dealing with us. And if we are sensible and look after it in a common sense way, as most Western countries have long done, then the Earth will not come to any harm at all.
That's right. Let's go back to the caller, sir. I mean, what else did this woman say? Because I've seen it, I hear it, it's everywhere. I mean, the humans have to be dealt with. Gaia needs a little snack of blood.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Alex. It was really ridiculous. They kind of just gave her free range to talk about this stuff for about 20 to 30 minutes straight. And she was saying that, we need to go through the United Nations, that we're killing the Earth, that it's worse than killing, that it's worse than genocide, it's worse than a mass extermination, that carbon emissions are bad, having kids are bad, polluting is bad, everything's bad. Basically, humans are evil, and they need to be dealt with. So.
Well, no, let me expand on that. I appreciate your points, because I've seen and read that similar sentiment, and then they ignore real environmental issues just to say, give world government power. But I wanted to get Lord Monckton's comment on that. I mean, the caller is not exaggerating, and I've seen UN statements, like in their Biological Diversity Assessment 96, not the one on the web, but the actual copy I have in my film, Road to Tyranny, the full text. They say, ancient societies knew how to deal with overpopulation, to not crush the breast of Mother Earth. They had human sacrifice, and that's what ancients did. They said, there's too many of us, take him up to the top of the pyramid, cut his heart out. Lord Monckton.
Yeah, this is exactly what they're now advocating again. I find it astonishing, this return to a kind of childish primitivism. It's an enormous backward step for humankind, but the great thing is that if we watch the left taking this step, and it is all on the left, nobody on the right is saying these half-baked things, then gradually people will realize that they're no longer dealing with a rational political force. They're dealing with maniacs who hate people. They hate the Earth, in fact. They would love to do harm to it by denying it the carbon dioxide, after all, which is the food of plants.
Unbelievable. Back in 60 seconds. Another hour straight ahead, and then a huge news blitz and more calls. Believe me, there's a lot of it straight ahead. Stay with us. All right, short segment here, long segment coming up with Lord Monckton. Your phone calls, and then a big news blitz. A lot of really important news. Obama now announces he doesn't even need Congress on immigration. He'll just legalize the illegals. That's Associated Press. That's called dictatorship. Let's go ahead and talk to who's up next here. We just talked to Mike in Mash. We're going to move along now to Richard in Alberta, Canada. You're on the air with Lord Monckton. Go ahead.